Welcome back to the Underground Football Podcast, a show where we talk about anything and everything NFL football from underground. Alongside my co host Jack Priller, I am Mike Maynard, and we're going to jump right into it. Today's episode, we're going to go over the New York Jets, the 2022 New York Jets for that matter. We have previewed the rest of the AFC East teams to this point, and this will be the fourth team, obviously, going over for finishing out the AFC East. And we've spoken highly of the other three teams, but we're going to get into the Jets, see what our our thoughts and our opinions are on them. But you know, um, Jack, how are we doing today? How are we feeling?
Feeling great, Mike. I'm ready to talk about this team, even though their starters don't obviously jump off the page. I mean, they got some bigger names on this roster, but I mean, I'm excited to talk about some of these rookies that they brought in and kind of how this organization is kind of in a movement towards change.
Yeah, I mean, you got to know, or you've looked at the Jets the past couple years, and they haven't really been what they've been hoping, and the quarterback problems, all around just team problems, front office problems. So I think they're definitely on the right track, and we'll get into why we think that. But yeah, I think there's a positive outlook here for the Jets, which is kind of the first time in a little bit that you can even say that. So I'll start right now with the 2021 New York Jets and how they finished this past season. Um, 2021, the Jets were 4-13, which put them fourth in the AFC East and gave them the fourth overall pick in the draft. Who will we'll get into what they ended up doing with that draft pick, but 4-13, obviously not the season you're hoping with your rookie quarterback that you drafted number two overall in Zach Wilson. You were kind of hoping him to come in and show the ability to lead a team to the playoffs and beyond. But I think it was kind of a known thing with the New York Jets front office that it might take more than 1 year. It wasn't going to be that quick of a turnaround. So 4-13 is not great, but it's the 11th straight season they've missed the playoffs, so it's not like it's a new thing for the Jets, but we'll see how they can improve on that in 2022. And they had a busy offseason this past offseason, making a bunch of new pickups. So we'll get into each one of them obviously and see what we think if that makes that big a difference. So I guess we'll start with this past year's draft in 2022, and like I said, they had the fourth overall pick. They also had the 10th overall pick and the 26th. So they were very very busy here in this first round of this 2022 NFL draft. So with the fourth overall pick, with the New York Jets' first pick in this draft, they took the safety out of Cincinnati, Sauce or Ahmad Gardner. We'll get into exactly what our opinions are on him, when we talk about the cornerbacks. But, number four overall pick, great player coming out. With the number 10 overall pick, the New York Jets took Garrett Wilson, the wide receiver out of Ohio State. With the number 26 pick, the Jets took Florida State defensive end Jermaine Johnson. And I'll just mention our last starter, probably guy that's going to get starting time out of the 2022 NFL draft, at least for week one, is going to be Brees Hall, the running back out of Iowa State. So we'll get into each one of those as we go position by position here. But, you know, they've been busy this offseason, and a lot of those guys are going to be starters year one, week one. So we'll see how they can really perform just getting thrown right into it. So, what are your opinions, for, initially about the draft class that the New York Jets brought in this offseason?
I think that they had a pretty successful draft. I mean, obviously, we don't know how these rookies are going to compete in the NFL, but I think that they made some right moves, bringing in some targets for Zach Wilson, obviously with Brees Hall and Garrett Wilson. I think that those are pretty good additions, and obviously their starting corner that they brought in, Sauce. I think that he kind of brings that edge to the defense that they needed, like a solid second corner under DJ Reed. So I think we'll obviously get more into that when we talk about the defense of this team. But I definitely think that they made it in the right direction or made moves in the right direction when it comes to actually having a successful draft this year.
Yeah, for sure. I think the 2022 Jets have a lot more hope and expectations than 2021, and so it should be a pretty good season. But we'll jump right in here with the offensive side of the ball. We'll go position by position, give our little analysis, and we'll keep it moving. So, obviously, quarterback position, you have the polarizing young quarterback out of BYU, that being Zach Wilson, who struggled his first year, and you're definitely looking for him to have a, a better second year overall. I mean, like you said, new weapons, new, just help around him on the offense in general, offensive line help, tight end, wide receiver, running back, everywhere. So this guy should have a better situation around him for this upcoming season. I mean, only time will tell, but I think, we went over Zach Wilson in our last episode on ranking the, bottom half of the quarterbacks in the NFL. So, we're not thinking crazy highly of him, but I think, with Zach Wilson, you've seen some throws that he can make that definitely show off his special athleticism. So I think there's no reason to think that he can't, improve on his maybe sloppy, mistake-ridden football and, become more of that polished guy that, can help your team win a lot of games. So Zach Wilson, is a big part of this team, and they're really hoping he can take a step up this coming year to project or, what am I trying to say? Catapult this team into, maybe a playoff run or, even just a positive, win-loss ratio or just they need hope here. They need progress. And I think, Zach Wilson, you're expecting him to make progress himself, which will help this team, move in the right direction.
Yeah, I mean, I personally think that Zach, obviously you kind of touched on it. Zach Wilson's not the greatest QB. I mean, we both have him ranked pretty low, and when we were talking about the NFL rankings with QBs, we both had him pretty low. And I think the only thing that Zach Wilson really has going for him right now is his like young age, and obviously is willing to learn in the system that obviously they just got an upgrade at coach with Robert Saleh. I think that I mean he's kind of like starting. I mean, last season was kind of his first season with like obviously. And I think that with time, Zach Wilson will get better, but right now he's just not really showing it. I think that if you kind of like look at some of the stats, I mean, I'll obviously talk about it more when we talk about the offensive line, but 44 sacks, seeing that number is pretty outrageous for coming in like for a QB, something you don't want to see your QB getting hit 44 times. Obviously, I don't know how much the offensive line was just letting people just walk through and sack him, or if Zach Wilson was just holding onto the ball too much to not really, or yeah, not getting rid of the ball as much as he should have. And so I kind of just think that that purpose right there just kind of shows that Zach Wilson might not be the greatest QB, but as like a Jets fan, you're obviously hoping for your young athletic QB to kind of move in the right direction and honestly head for a breakout season.
Yeah, I think there's no reason that he can't at least show flashes more than he did even this past season. And it was rough. I'm not gonna lie to you. It was a rough 2021 for Zach Wilson, but again, I don't see him not improving on that. So, we'll just touch on the backup quarterbacks really quick. You have the veteran Joe Flacco, who probably won't see any time. I mean, 37 years old. He's been doing it for a while. He's solid if you need him to come in, but he's not gonna do anything too special. You have the phenom Mike White, who came out of nowhere this past season and had a game or two that were pretty decent, but he showed against the Buffalo Bills that four interceptions for him, zero touchdowns. He showed why he's a backup quarterback and not a starter in this league. So, nothing really there with Mike White. But this is overall it's Zach Wilson's team. He's going to be the starter week one. We know this. He's going to be the starter the whole season. So, barring any injuries to the quarterback position, it should be Zach Wilson leading this team and like we both kind of touched on, hopefully he'll make a step in the right direction and improve himself and improve this team overall. So we'll jump into the running back position, which we've talked about three teams now in the AFC East, each one of them kind of having that running back by committee, and I think the New York Jets here kind of have a committee, but it seems like they kind of have their number one here, and that number one guy being Brees Hall, the running back out of Iowa State. Um, Rookie, this coming year, so this will be his first year with the team, first year in the NFL, second round pick, picked 36th overall out of Iowa State, and I think this is the type of guy that can definitely be your workhorse, feature back, can carry the load, carry the ball, 20 times a game if you need him to. He did it at Iowa State plenty of times. the guy came sixth in Heisman voting in college, so he's capable of being basically an entire team's offense. Obviously, he's not going to need to do that necessarily here in New York, but I think Brees Hall is he's the first running back taken in this draft. I think he's going to be the best rookie coming out, and I think he's going to get the most, playing time. So we'll be able to see pretty early on how Brees Hall is going to do. But I think he's definitely capable of being your workhorse back. The guy's super solid in every aspect of being a running back. He's got power, he's got speed, he's got vision, he's got that elusiveness to break tackles. So he should be a really solid running back one here. But I'd like to hear your opinions on Brees Hall, what you're thinking of him. Even just starting the season week one, what are your expectations on Mr. Brees Hall?
Well, Brees Hall obviously brings it to the table. He's obviously an athlete that, I mean, that's why he got drafted into the NFL. I mean, what does worry me, obviously, is the offensive line creating holes for him to be successful. But, I mean, Brees Hall, I mean, you're not worried about Brees Hall not being able to perform to what you're expecting him to. I mean, putting up some solid numbers in college. I mean, 1,400 rushing yards in his last season, 20 touchdowns. You're expecting him to basically pound the rock. I mean, he's not the biggest receiving back, obviously. But you're not really looking for that right now. You're looking for a guy that's just going to put his head down and run people. I mean, not run people over, but you're looking for a guy who's going to put his head down and run the ball. And I think that's kind of what the Jets wanted in a running back. And I think that's what the Jets are kind of hoping for that Brees Hall's going to do. He's going to add a game to their offense where he's able to put his head down and run. I think that's going to take a little bit of pressure off Zach Wilson's shoulders. And I think that's going to kind of open up their offense a little more, get defense guessing. So they're not just only focused on Zach Wilson throwing the ball.
Yeah, and I think the running backs that are also, around him in this team, and we'll get into them in a second here, they'll be able to complement his skill set pretty well. And I think definitely, yeah, you got to look at Brees Hall as a great pick for this team. He slipped to the second round. Some people thought maybe end of the first round he'd get selected. Slipped to the second round, the Jets got him, which the Jets had a big need at running back, so he should be really solid. Super fast guy, ran a 4.39 40-yard dash at the combine. So has that breakaway speed to, get through a defense and break off big runs. And like you said, produced really well in college. So we should see a, pretty solid season one for Brees Hall. He should get a pretty good workload as well. So it'll be interesting to see, how he can do behind, like you said, maybe not the best offensive line, but I think, they've improved a little bit. So we'll get into that as well. But running back two, on this depth chart was the running back one this past season, that being Michael Carter. Um, he was a rookie last year out of North Carolina, drafted in the fourth round, and I think he kind of, he showed flashes. He showed that he can be a pretty solid running back in the league. I think he was just kind of not exactly your feature back that you're looking for, not able to carry the workload. I mean, only 5'8", not your type of guy that's gonna run between the tackles and take on these linebackers, defensive linemen. So he's more of a guy to get to the edge and maybe be a little bit active in the pass catching game. So Michael Carter will be a good complement to Brees Hall, but I think he showed why he's not going to be your workhorse guy this past season. Um, and then we'll jump in here with the rest of the running backs here. We have Tevin Coleman coming over with that San Francisco 49ers connection. He didn't really get a ton of action this past season. Back half of his career, 29 years old for a running back, is getting up there in age. So he's gonna probably get some playing time, but not. He's not going to be again like your feature back at all to any at any sense. So he'll uh, he'll be able to use his size, being 6'1", 210 pounds, to get between the tackles a little bit more than a guy like Michael Carter. So Tevin Coleman will be a nice complement to even a guy like Michael Carter. But I think you know we'll just move on from him, and then you have Ty Johnson, young guy again, only 24 years old, rookie in 2019, drafted in the sixth round. Another shorter guy, better in the pass catching game necessarily. So he's another guy with some speed, like a Brees Hall. So he got the most workload of his career this past season in 2021 with the Jets, and I think all of these guys will get some run, but I think Brees Hall is your main guy that you're focused on here on, being the main guy in this running back room to get the bulk amount of action in the passing game and the receiving game, excuse me, and the ground game, just getting Brees Hall as many touches as possible because he showed in college why he's a special, special player. So the rest of these guys will definitely get some time, but I think, like I said, we talked about these other three AFC teams having that running back by committee, and I think this is the team that has their most defined running back one, albeit still having three guys behind him that are definitely serviceable players.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, like you mentioned, serviceable players. Honestly, they're not the guys that you're kind of looking to be flashy. I mean, Michael Carter wasn't really obviously what they hoped that he would be when they drafted him. I mean, obviously being a fourth round pick, they weren't really too high on him, but I think that these three guys you mentioned honestly will serve as like obvious like kind of like water break people. You know, Brees Hall's gonna need a break every once in a while because he's gonna be getting bulk carries. And I think that these three guys honestly are not bad to step in real quick and get a couple runs in. I mean, they're not horrible. They're not horrible running backs as you kind of touched on. I think that's gonna. I think the Jets kind of set that up like that with drafting Brees Hall. They kind of wanted a more workhorse back, and I think that he kind of was like the most like NFL. You know what I mean? Like he's 6'1", 220 pounds, 220 pounds. He obviously can take these hits that the Jets think that he can take, and I think that's why they kind of have him to be the bulk workhorse guy, and they have these other guys that kind of complement him because they're gonna need people with Brees Hall taking as many hits as he's gonna take.
For sure, yeah, I think, it should overall be a pretty solid running back room. I think even if Brees Hall struggles out the gate, you have a couple other guys behind him to, you know, help him, like you said, get those breaks when he needs it and work on his game. So, we'll jump into the wide receivers now, who are going to be, Zach Wilson's targets. Um, I like to immediately touch on Garrett Wilson, the rookie out of Ohio State. Drafted with the 10th overall pick. This guy's going to come in and be your probably wide receiver one to start the year. I think coming out, he was the most defined route runner, the best in the draft, in my opinion, the best receiver. I mean, he got drafted below Drake London for the Atlanta Falcons, but I truly believe that Garrett Wilson is the most NFL ready and the most refined overall wide receiver. Coming out, he ran unbelievable 40-yard dash time. He's unbelievably fast, can get deep, can get vertical down the field. Um, but is also just a polished route runner to get open in the short and medium game. So I think Garrett Wilson will be, Zach Wilson's new favorite target. I think as long as they can get a good chemistry going here in training camp, these two should have a great, career together. Both of them being super, super young guys. Garrett Wilson coming out at 22 years old. I think, he's a super solid wide receiver one to have. I mean, we'll see how he can translate to the NFL, but I think, in college he showed that he'll be a top receiver in the NFL as his career goes on. So super excited to see Garrett Wilson. Um, but yeah, I mean, what are your opinions on Garrett Wilson coming out, as a first round pick? What do you think? You think he's going to be starter, wide receiver one week one? Because that's kind of what I'm saying, I guess. Is I think he's going to be wide receiver one, getting the most targets, getting the most playing time type of thing starting the
Yeah.
season.
Yeah, I mean, obviously the Jets picking him, I mean, 10th pick overall, I mean, that's pretty impressive for a wide receiver. And I think that him with his size, I mean, being 6 feet tall, I mean, that's a pretty solid size for a wide receiver. And I mean, you kind of touched on him having that like good speed and the route running. I mean, that obviously shown with this past season. Um, in Ohio State, I mean, obviously dropping 1,000 yards. I mean, that's pretty good, impressive as a wide receiver. I think that he's kind of that solid wide receiver that I think the Jets were looking for, and I think Zach Wilson was looking for and hoping for. I think Garrett Wilson honestly will be a great addition to this team, and I think he will obviously be Zach Wilson's number one target. I mean, I kind of in agreement with you here. I mean, none of these other guys really, um, obviously, none of these other guys were like top 10 picks. Um, like they have the talent to be a top 10 pick. So I think Garrett Wilson obviously will jump up and be that wide receiver one and solidify himself as that wide receiver one. I mean, you know how high I am on having your team having a wide receiver one, like a clear wide receiver one. I think that connection that these two can build obviously will only make them better. And I think that when Zach Wilson and Garrett Wilson are on the same page, they will be phenomenal duo together.
Yeah, and I think you got to mention that Wilson to Wilson, connection. That's got to be you got to give some points there just for the names. Having the exact same last name, these guys are going to be, having that connection there. I mean, I'm totally reaching for straws here, but overall, Garrett Wilson should be a great, year one, week one rookie wide receiver. I think he was super polished coming out of college, like I said. So he should be good, right off the bat. And like I kind of touched on with Brees Hall, running a super good 40-yard dash time. Brees Hall at 4.38 or 4.39, excuse me, and Garrett Wilson running a 4.39 or 4.38. Oh my God, I'm getting the mix up. Brees Hall 4.39, Garrett Wilson 4.38. These guys are both unbelievable athletes, can get down the field quicker than most. And I think at wide receiver, you're going to hope that a guy like Zach Wilson, who has the arm talent to get the ball vertical, I think Garrett Wilson will complement that really well. So yeah, I see Garrett Wilson with all the tools to be your alpha number one receiver. Put your best corner on him, and he'll still be able to get open. And yeah, so good outlook for Garrett Wilson. But
Yeah.
we'll jump into who I assume to be the wide receiver too, and that being Elijah Moore, drafted in 2021 in the second round out of Ole Miss. Super young guy as well, still only 22 years old, similar to his Garrett Wilson or his teammate in Garrett Wilson. So both of these guys are super young guys coming out and are able to, grow as players. But I think Elijah Moore was more of your short route runner, slot guy that can get open quick and get the ball in his hands and let him, run after the catch. And, he didn't have that number one or number two receiver season that you were kind of looking for as a second round pick. But I think more time with Zach Wilson and having that number one guy in Garrett Wilson to kind of take the load off of Elijah Moore and take the pressure off of him, I think that'll only help him. So, 538 yards, five touchdowns this past season for Elijah Moore, pretty solid. I mean, as your I guess wide receiver two this past season. Maybe you'd look for a little bit more, but I think Elijah Moore showed that he's capable of being, that slot guy for you, showing that he will have a role on this team. And, he should be getting a lot of receptions underneath and doing a lot with his legs after the catch, similar to a lot of the guys we've been talking about with some of these other teams, like a Tyreek Hill, like a Jalen Waddle, like even a Debo Samuel, these guys that can get open, in the short game and then really do a lot with the ball in their hands. So Elijah Moore, super solid, um, but also super
Yeah.
young. So we'll see if he
Yeah, I
can
want to
grow
touch on
into the
that real
player
quick.
that I'm kind of describing here. But yeah, what are your thoughts on Elijah Moore?
Yeah, I mean, I think that it's kind of hard to just look at stats and have you tell you about Elijah Moore. I mean, obviously, I think that his QB play and I think the team honestly just underperformed last year. I think that kind of just says a lot about his stats. Wasn't able to produce obviously as much as you'd hope, but I would like to point out that he is 22 years old. You mentioned that he is young. I think that this duo that they kind of are setting up right now with Garrett Wilson and Elijah Moore. I mean, being a second round pick, I mean you're almost there. I mean, he was pick 34. I mean, that's pretty close to the first round. So this guy's first round talent basically. And I think Elijah Moore is a great receiver. I mean, he showed strides. He has shown strides of him being a great receiver. And I mean, in last year and against Miami, I mean, putting up 141 yards. I mean, you can't really expect more. I mean, that's a obviously a pretty impressive game that you would expect like Tyreek Hill to have or something like that. I mean, so I think that we've seen strides of him and seen flashes of him being great. Obviously, we want to see that a little bit more consistently to be number one wide receiver in the NFL. But I think him moving down to that number two spot, kind of sitting behind Garrett Wilson, because I think Garrett Wilson's obviously a better receiver. I think that these two kind of will complement each other on the opposite sides of the ball. You know what I mean? So I think having these two amazing targets for Zach Wilson, I think will obviously not only help him, but well, obviously not only help him.
Yeah, I think Elijah Moore should have a definite role in this offense, and whether he can elevate himself to be, your overall wide receiver two is kind of yet to be seen. But even if not, I think being that slot guy, like I said, underneath, is something that every team needs. So he'll definitely get his playing time. He'll definitely see a big role. So I'll jump into who I believe will be the number three receiver, that being Corey Davis, the former number five overall pick in 2017, former Tennessee Titan, still only 27 years old. It feels like he's been in the league for a while, but Corey Davis has struggled, to start his career with the Jets. you may be looking for a little bit more, but he only got into 9 games this past season, and he struggled. I won't. I'll keep it frank. He struggled this season, but I think most, like you said with Elijah Moore, most of these guys in the wide receiver room with the Jets kind of struggled this past season, and I think Garrett Wilson will definitely be able to take a lot of pressure off of these guys to be, you know, that number one guy when they're not really equipped to be that number one guy. So, Corey Davis was a super solid guy in Tennessee, had A.J. Brown to kind of be that number one, and he could be the number two. I think that really worked well for him. So, you could definitely see Corey Davis be a solid number two here behind Garrett Wilson, possibly. But Corey Davis is more of your deep threat guy. Big body, contested catch um, guy. So 6'3", 209 pounds for Corey Davis. Obviously, super tall as a wide receiver, able to get you know elevated up in the air and catch those passes that Zach Wilson's delivering. Zach Wilson's best play of this past season, in my opinion, was a play where he got way out of the pocket to the right side and launched one 60 yards down the field to Corey Davis in the end zone. So this this guy has some special athletic ability. It's just he's been a little bit or he struggled a little bit to get to the best of his ability. I mean, obviously coming out as a number five overall pick, he's definitely got that ability to be, your number one guy. He just hasn't really showed it yet. So I think number two is super solid role for Corey Davis. So I think, it's definitely a real situation where you could see him be your number two on the outside. Alongside Garrett Wilson, and then have Elijah Moore be that slot guy, going over the middle. But what are your thoughts on Corey Davis here in 2022? What do we think about the former number five overall pick?
He's been in the league for some time now, obviously, like you kind of touched on. I mean, he hasn't really put up spectacular numbers, but he's had some seasons where he's shown that he can be a pretty viable option to his quarterback. And obviously, with the Jets having two great receivers, kind of like what we said ahead of him, I mean, it doesn't mean that he doesn't lack the talent. And I think that obviously these Jets have pretty good talent when it comes to being at the wide receiver position here. I think they have like a solid, but they just haven't seen the production that they want to see out of these guys that have this talent. I think both of these guys can definitely bring something to, or all these guys can definitely bring something to the table to help their team win games. And I think Corey Davis is no slouch. I think that he will obviously turn up a little bit. I mean, I don't know where he's going to be sitting at when it comes to playing the game or playing the season. So I can't really give you like an estimated guess on what I think he's going to do. I don't know if he's what he's going to do. So honestly, I'm just hoping that Corey Davis can kind of put it all together this season and just show everybody why he was a top five pick.
Yeah, I think the Jets overall have a pretty solid skill set base in this wide receiver group. I think Garrett Wilson's kind of your do-it-all guy, and then you kind of have your short route guy that can get open underneath in Elijah Moore, and then your Corey Davis who can get um, those contested catches downfield and work vertically. So this should be a solid group overall. You have guys that can fill different roles that you need. So we'll touch on the fourth and beyond guys. I guess your fourth guy is probably going to be Braxton Berrios. He showed a little bit of a connection with Zach Wilson this past season. I think you're not expecting a ton out of him. He's kind of your returner, kick returner, punt returner guy. So he's not really expected to be, your alpha number one receiver running unbelievable routes. But get the ball in his hands. He can make things happen. Only 26 years old, had 431 yards and two touchdowns this past season. So pretty good season, as a number, I guess, three or four receiver this past season for Zach Wilson. And then the only other guy I really feel like is worth touching on is Mr. Denzel Mims, former second round pick out of Baylor in 2020. He really has struggled a lot, to start his career. And I think, coming out, I was a lot lower on Denzel Mims than it seemed like a lot of other people were. There was first round hype around Denzel Mims, but I think the problem with him has always just been his lack of separation. He's struggled since college to get open in the route running game, and he's only 24 years old, and he's definitely pretty great at contested catching, and I talked about Corey Davis being that guy for them, so does he really have a role here? I'm not sure, but I think Corey Davis just has shown the ability to, run better routes and get open more and work with the ball in his hands a little bit more than Denzel Mims, who's kind of stiff and just your, screw it, I got to get the ball up and hope that my guy comes down with it. Denzel Mims can be that guy at times, but he obviously has struggled his first 2 years. This past season with Zach Wilson only having 8 receptions for 133 yards, 0 touchdowns. So we'll see if Denzel Mims can pick it up. But I think this wide receiver room is kind of crowded, and I think it'll be hard for him and Braxton Berrios to really see too much of a role here.
Yeah, I would 100% agree with that. I mean, obviously we're talking about like kind of like the bottom of the Jets receiving core right now, and I think that they got some decent guys, but honestly, I think these main three kind of headline it, and obviously, I think we're all looking forward to see what these main three do, not really what these guys do. I mean, obviously, these guys are going to come in when the other guys need breaks, but I think we're all really just mainly focused on their top three guys.
Yeah, for sure. I think overall it'll be a good group. So we can hop into the tight end room right now. These guys will all be weapons for your young quarterback in Zach Wilson. You're looking for these guys to, elevate him and, have him show flashes of why he was, worth taking with the number 2 pick. So they bring in a guy that can hopefully do that in tight end CJ Uzama from the Cincinnati Bengals, who just had, his breakout season, I would say. Going to the Super Bowl, obviously, but he had a good season himself, and they signed him to a 3-year, $24 million deal. So he got paid pretty handsomely. So he'll be your number one tight end here in New York, and I think he's a solid guy that can be your red zone target if you need him to. Can be that sure-handed underneath guy for Zach Wilson. Third and short, he needs it. He needs a guy to just get his hands on the ball and get those couple yards. I think C.J. Uzama can be that guy. But he's an underrated athlete. Can work with the ball in his hands. Decent run blocker as well. He's an all-around pretty solid tight end. So we'll we'll see a decent guy here for Zach Wilson to have a connection with, and I think Uzama showed that he can do it with a young quarterback in Joe Burrow. So no reason to think that he can't have that connection with Zach Wilson. And I've seen him on a couple podcasts, talking with the Bussin' and the Boys podcast with Taylor Lewan and Will Compton. He's super happy to be in New York, and he thinks very highly of Zach Wilson. So the two of them should get a good connection going, and yeah, I think good outlook for 2022 for CJ Uzama. You saw him kind of, like I said, kind of have his breakout in 2021, and I think he can improve on that in 2022 as well.
Yeah, I mean, for sure his breakout. I mean, yeah, definitely. We haven't seen him do much other than this year other than this year with the Bengals. I mean, he's obviously solidified himself as a solid open target with Joe Burrow, and I think that he'll bring something to the table that Zach Wilson's kind of not used to, and having that extra guy on the field that can kind of get open and is just like kind of like that sure-handed target like you were mentioning. And I think yeah, being 6'5", 270. I mean, you're not really looking at him to burn your guys downfield. You're looking at him to get open underneath and kind of use his like size to outmatch his opponents. And I think that's kind of what he does. That's why he's good at what he does because that's he has a size. And I think Zach Wilson hasn't really had a red zone target. I think CJ Uzoma might be that guy, which might be something that he wasn't really used to in the Bengals, only having 5 touchdowns. Not the greatest touchdowns that you were hoping for out of a starting tight end in the NFL. But I think Jamar Chase kind of was taking most of his looks, and I think now that he's kind of going to be a great piece on this Jets team. I think that CJ Uzoma could definitely see more of an increase in his touchdowns and more of an increase in his receptions because Zach Wilson's going to kind of need this safety net to throw to when it comes to throwing the ball underneath.
Yeah, and I think it's underrated to talk about Joe Burrow having that connection already with Jamar Chase. So he was kind of that guy for him, um, I need a third down completion or something. He's going to go to his guy in Jamar Chase. Where now I think C.J. Uzama, like you said, will have a bigger role here, being that guy for Zach Wilson. So I think I'll touch on some of the next tight ends. I think Tyler Conklin's definitely going to be your number 2 guy. Played with the Minnesota Vikings, and he's been kind of in and out with the Vikings having Kyle Rudolph while he was there, and also Irv Smith Jr. So he hasn't really been that number one guy ever in his career, but showed up last season with 593 yards, 3 touchdowns. Pretty good season overall for Tyler Conklin. So he'll be a number 2 guy to play that similar role to CJ Uzama, but in those two tight end sets, you have two pretty solid tight ends. And then they draft Jeremy Ruckert, the third round pick this 2022 draft out of Ohio State. Another similar guy, big body tight end to all these guys are pretty similar. Decent run blockers, catch the ball in the short game, sure-handed guys, and they'll be a pretty solid tight end room. I think CJ Uzama is going to be your number one though, and he got paid, to be your number one. So Jeremy Ruckert and Tyler Conklin may see some action, but I think CJ Uzama is your main guy in this tight end room.
Yeah, I mean, I kind of liked how you put that. I mean, definitely Tyler Conklin obviously was he kind of was like an underrated tight end last year, and I think he kind of was like an under the radar pickup for the Jets this year, and I think obviously he's just kind of they're kind of bolstering that tight end room, and I kind of like how they're doing that, and I think just getting Zach Wilson another kind of target, another underrated target will be nice, a nice addition for this team.
Yeah, for sure. I think we can move on to the offensive line if that's cool with you. I mean,
Yeah,
these tight ends will play a role in the run blocking game for sure, but
yeah.
um,
Okay, actually, hold on. I totally forgot to mention their run block. I mean, obviously, with them being both heavier set tight ends, you're not really looking. I kind of mentioned that CJ Uzoma, not really looking at him to burn your guys downfield. But I mean, being 270 pounds, I mean, you're hoping that this guy can set a nice edge when it comes to like blocking inside zone and outside zones even. So you're really hoping that these two tight ends right now can obviously have a solid success rate when it comes to run blocking in the NFL.
yeah, I feel like they're both solid guys in that aspect, and Brees Hall should benefit, getting to the edge, going behind these guys, and going behind this offensive line that we'll hop into now. And I'll start from left tackle, go over to right tackle. We have George Fant at the left tackle spot. The new addition, Laken Tomlinson at left guard, Connor McGovern at center, Elijah Vera Tucker at right guard, and your right tackle is Big Mackay Becton. So, you know, your brand new guy here is Laken Tomlinson coming over from the San Francisco 49ers. He's been a super solid guy over there, and you sign him to a 3-year, $40 million deal. So, he's getting paid to be your anchor in the middle of the offensive line, and he's going to be a mauler. He's a great guy in the run game. He can get after, um, these guys at the second level, get up to move up in those outside zones that Kyle Shanahan loves the 49ers so much. So he's definitely going to be capable of running any type of scheme that they want here. And I think this offense will be similar to that San Francisco 49ers Kyle Shanahan outside zone offense. So he should have a pretty good transition here from San Francisco to New York here, and I think he'll be super solid on the interior. Your other guy in the interior is the first round pick from last year, Elijah Vera Tucker, drafted 14th overall in the 2021 draft, only 23 years old. He showed flashes this past season, but I think overall he was not what you were thinking and not what you were expecting out of a first round pick. So hopefully he can, grow into the player that they're hoping they have there. I think Mekhi Becton is, your best guy on this offensive line. He's your guy to talk about. 6'7", 363 pounds. Former first round pick in 2020, drafted 11th overall out of Louisville. Um, but this guy is the definition of a mauler. He's gonna pancake as many people as he can. That's his goal is to, put that defender in front of him in the run game at least. Put that defender in front of him on his ass. So Mekhi Becton's super super valuable in the run game, especially to clear open holes for a guy like Brees Hall. So I think running the ball to that right side, having Elijah Vera Tucker and Mekhi Becton, two young guys that are both big guys can clear holes in the run game. I think that'll be super nice for them. And just touch on George Fant being kind of that bounce around left tackle. He was with the Seattle Seahawks for a little bit, and he was playing a little bit more of a third tackle role, maybe a little bit of a tight end role. So he'll be solid. He's an agile guy, pretty good athlete. So again, this outside zone offense, he'll be able to get up to that second level, get outside, seal the edge. So I think overall this offensive line is pretty solid. It's definitely an upgrade with Lake and Tomlinson. I feel like that's an underrated signing for these guys. They're trying to get that, like I said, that outside zone offense going with Zach Wilson and Brees Hall, and I think having a guy like Lake and Tomlinson who's shown that he can run that offense pretty well and make Pro Bowls because of it, I think bringing him in will be a an underrated signing here.
Yeah, I mean, obviously this past season they didn't obviously get it done having Zach Wilson get sacked 44 times. I mean, I don't like to look at just getting him getting sacked and how much that was their fault or his fault. But yeah, I think with the addition of Laken Tomlinson will obviously help their new running back Brees Hall. I think Laken is not a bad O lineman. I think that he can definitely clear some holes. And how you were kind of mentioned, like Mekhi Becton and Elijah Vera Tucker, those guys are both extremely young. I mean, only being 23 years old, you're kind of looking for these guys to grow. And I think that with them being such big guys, I think that they definitely can create a hole for Brees Hall and make him have a successful season. I think we're kind of when we're talking about Brees Hall kind of having a good season, I think it's unfair to mention these five guys. I think the offensive line kind of is the ones that get it done. Obviously, Brees Hall makes a miss, but the whole line unit is making sure that he doesn't get hit in the backfield. So we'll really see if the Jets. I like that the Jets are kind of emphasizing their offensive line with drafting two guys in the first round that are offensive linemen. I think those are both. I think those are great strides and showing that they're obviously trying to build their offensive line, obviously making a move for Lakin. So I think with them moving in this direction where they're trying to protect their quarterback and also make holes for their running back, I think this is a great move for them, and I think that they will obviously get better this year because of their addition with Lakin Tomlinson.
Yeah, definitely. I think this will be overall a solid offensive line in the run game, and I think especially in the run game, but also they can all defend Zach Wilson pretty well. So this will be a solid group. I think you know these guys are going to be young overall. So, I'm recapping the whole offense here. This whole offense is going to be really, really young overall. These guys, a lot of second year guys, a lot of rookie guys. So it'll be, uh, we talked about it, 18 times in the last, episode when we were going over quarterbacks, but it's a lot of speculation here of these guys to grow as players because, again, they're so young. I mean, everywhere except probably tight end, you have a guy who's 23 or younger. So, and they're starting. So this is probably the youngest core offense that we're gonna see this whole season, and they'll be able to grow together as players and grow chemistry together. So it should be pretty good. I think 2022 it's still early for a lot of these guys, but I think they can definitely make strides into becoming, a pretty solid offensive unit overall. Maybe not to the level of, any of their AFC East opponents, but I think overall offensively, this offense will be able to grow, and I think as the year goes on, you'll see improvement throughout, the entire season.
Yeah, for sure. They definitely are like one of the youngest teams that we've talked about this far. They definitely are the youngest team that we've talked about this far. In our podcast. But yeah, I think that we're gonna have to see how they do. I mean, obviously young guys in the NFL obviously might not have the greatest success, but I mean it's kind of you're kind of hoping that these guys grow into their roles. I think that's what the Jets were hoping for. I think that with them getting all these young players at these positions, I think that they're kind of hoping that their guys will grow into or like mold them into the guy that they want them to be. So I think that the Jets kind of know what they're doing. And I think they we could see a solid season out of these guys.
Definitely, definitely, and I think we're gonna take a quick break here before we hop into the defensive side of the ball. But yeah, just to recap one more time, Jets offense, struggled a lot in 2021, but we're hoping that things will change and things will go in a better direction here with a bunch of new additions. And yeah, I think overall this New York Jets offense should be a lot better than 2021's season or 2021's team. So we'll take a quick break here before we hop into the defensive side of the ball. So stay tuned. We're going to be going over the defense and the special teams for the New York Jets shortly after this break. So yeah, keep it here on the Underground Football Podcast.
Hey guys, I'm your co-host Priller. Go check us out on TikTok at UFPod, where we post updates on the latest news in the NFL and where we post original creative content daily. Thanks for listening to this short ad. Now let's get back to talking football.
Welcome back to the Underground Football Podcast. Today's episode, we're going over the New York Jets 2022 roster and our season outlook for them. We just finished doing the offense, obviously, and now we're going to hop into the defense. We're going to start here with the edge rushing group, the edge rushing room, whatever you want to call it here. And, I believe they're headlined by none other than the, injured 2021 candidate Carl Lawson. unfortunately wasn't able to play any games this past season due to a torn ACL. So we'll um, we'll see what Carl Lawson can do. Coming back from injury, it'll be interesting to see if he's the same guy. But he was super super solid with the Cincinnati Bengals his first couple seasons. His rookie season getting 8.5 sacks. You know, immediately that jumps off as wow, this guy's going to be a pretty solid guy coming out. Struggled a little bit more as time went on, but he's here in New York to be your number one edge rusher, and he hasn't got the chance yet. But I think there's no reason he can't get there, and he's one of your highest paid guys on the team, getting $45 million over 3 years. So this guy's here to be your number one guy, and what are you thinking about Carl Lawson? As his injuries definitely an interesting thing to talk about, but we've seen guys be able to come back pretty well. I'm thinking, Nick Bosa, in his past, this past season, having a torn ACL, coming back, and he played at a All-Pro, Pro Bowl level. So we'll see. I mean, what Carl Lawson can do. But what are you thinking about him in 2022?
Yeah, his injury obviously is the only thing that's kind of questioning like my decision on him. But I mean, obviously, I think he's a solid edge rusher when it comes to being on the Jets. If he can come back to what he was doing in 2017, like his rookie year, I mean, 8.5 sacks, that's pretty solid production from an edge rusher. I think that's kind of what the Jets are needing right now. They're needing that pressure so they can help out like all over around on their team. I mean, having more pressure is never a bad thing. I think if Carl Lawson can definitely put that pressure on the opposing team's quarterbacks, it will help their other defensive positions make plays on the ball and stuff like that. So I think that Carl Lawson definitely is gonna we're gonna have to see what Carl Lawson's gonna have to do this season. But I think that he's gonna be a big name to talk about when it comes into talking about this Jets defense and as a whole.
Yeah, I think he'll have the starting job week one. I mean, we'll see where things go for him depending on how he, comes back from that injury. But they paid him to be their number one, pass rusher. So hopefully he's able to come back pretty similar to what he was before the injury and excel at that number one spot. So I'll jump into who I believe should be number two, and I believe it should be the rookie first round pick, number 26 overall, going to the New York Jets. That is Jermaine Johnson, the defensive end out of Florida State, 23 years old coming out. Super, super explosive. A lot of people had him, going in the top 10, top 15 range. This guy kind of fell down draft boards, and still really unknown why that happened. I'm not sure if there's something the guys in the league saw that we didn't, but I think this guy should have a bright future as long as there's no problems that again we don't know about, maybe off the field, maybe injury stuff, we don't know. But I think if you're looking at this guy's film, it's unbelievable. He should be he should have been a top 10 pick, and edge rusher was a need for these Jets. I know we just talked, pretty highly of Carl Lawson, but Jermaine Johnson has the capability of being that alpha number one guy that can really, get after the quarterback on, a play-to-play basis, and be your number one guy getting the most pressures, most sacks, and the guy that defenses have to kind of scheme around. So Jermaine Johnson's going to be great in the run defense game, on the edge, setting that edge and being super, super instinctive and consistent as a run defender. Um, and he's got that length. He's got a great wingspan to stack those run blockers and reach his arms out and slow down running backs and stuff. So he'll be great in the run game, but he also has that speed, that explosiveness, that power to work, and get after the quarterback as well. So I think you know uh, this edge rushing, duo, these top two guys, it's definitely a lot that we need to see out of the two of them, because one's a rookie and one didn't play all last season. So it'll be interesting to see what they can do. But I think both of these guys have pretty strong capability of being a great one-two punch on the edge.
Yeah, I mean, before I talk about Jermaine Johnson, I kind of just want to go back to Carl real quick. I mean, I was just looking at some recent interviews that he has. People are saying that he's coming back better than ever. I mean, I think this is an interesting thing that they're saying about him. I think that with him coming back, obviously from his injury, I think that he'll have this determination and this like dog in him to kind of show like prove all the haters wrong. I think that he's gonna obviously perform this season. But now jumping into like Jermaine Johnson, obviously you kind of mentioned most of the stuff that I was going to talk about, but yeah, I mean I don't know why he dropped so far down. I mean he obviously is a freak athlete, and I think that he can succeed in the NFL. I mean in his last season at Florida State, dropping almost 12 sacks, and that's pretty impressive. It's pretty impressive as an edge rusher, and I think Jermaine Johnson will not only help the Jets, but he will like solidify that D line on the edge. And I think you're correct in saying that he will probably be that number two guy on that D line, the other on the opposite side of Carl Lawson. And so yeah, I think Jermaine Johnson and Carl Lawson will be a duo to talk about in the upcoming season. I think that they're going to have some great success rates. I mean, I don't know where their sack numbers are going to kind of line up towards, but I think these two are going to be kind of an underrated duo when it comes to being an edge rushing group in the NFL.
Yeah, I mean we'll get into the interior guys in a second here, but those guys will be able to help. They'll be getting pressure from the inside, and those edge guys will have one-on-ones on the outside to kind of work their magic out there. So these guys should have a pretty good season together, and like I said, only time will tell. But we'll hop into the rest of the edge group, and I think your third guy is probably going to be Vinny Curry, veteran guy who had a really good, beginning to his career with Philadelphia, and he's been a solid rotational guy. He's never really been your like starting, edge guy for much of his career, but I think he'll definitely be able to come in once in a while, get some pressure on the QB. You have a young guy in Bryce Huff, only 25 years old or 24 years old, excuse me. Hasn't shown too much, but 2 sacks in his last 2 seasons. Pretty solid as a guy who's not getting a ton of playing time. He's coming in rotationally, so those top two guys are going to be the guys you're looking for. But they have a decent one-two punch behind them to get after the quarterback once in a while and just let those guys get the breaks that they need and have fresh guys on the field at all times. So anything you want to comment on those other edge guys, or I mean we can jump right into the interior pass rushers.
Uh, I mean, not really. Obviously, just mentioning that these guys are young, so I think they have room to improve. I mean, obviously, Vinny Curry is not young, but Bryce Huff definitely could see some game time just because he is a young body, a young athletic guy. I think that definitely could see him on the field.
Yeah, definitely. I think these guys will work well with the interior group here, which we'll hop into right now. Headlined by Big Q, Quinnen Williams. Um, Super likable guy, super young guy, former number 3 overall pick in 2019, right behind Nick Bosa, who we just talked about a little bit as well. Hasn't been that level of guy, but I think, his rookie year he definitely struggled. And his last 2 seasons he's really kind of had his breakout and shown why he can be, force to be reckoned with. In the interior of this defensive line. I think right now, if you're looking for the New York Jets' best pass rusher overall going into Week 1, I think it's Quinnen Williams. I think this guy is a menace on the interior. He's 6'3", 303 pounds, able to use his power, his strength to overpower these interior offensive linemen. But he has the quickness and the explosiveness to break through and get after the quarterback quick, get these sacks, which 2020 he had 7 sacks, 2021 6 sacks. This guy is going to get after the quarterback, but he's also really, really good at defending the run, taking on multiple blockers and allowing his linebackers to fly in and, make those tackles. So Quinn Williams, you can't say enough about this guy. He's one of the better interior defensive linemen in the league, and he's going to, continue his super young career as that number one guy on this team overall. I think not a lot of teams can say their number one pass rushers is on the interior besides maybe Aaron Donald and maybe a few other guys. But I think the Jets have this guy that can work from the inside, the interior of the defensive line. He can get through and get pressure from the inside, which is rare to see. I think a lot of these guys on the inside are struggling. Because obviously the edge is easier to get around. You have one guy, or just sometimes you're able to speed around the edge. You can overpower the guys. A lot more moves you can do on the edge rather than being a foot away from the guy in front of you on the defense or in the D tackle spot where Quinn Williams is. So he's shown that he can do it at a high level. And like I said, 24 years old, room to grow for this guy into an even bigger asset for this team.
Yeah, I mean, I don't. I think the interior D lineman don't get that much recognition when it comes to being kind of like the workhorse of the defense. I mean, they're in the inside every single play, obviously, getting just absolutely double teamed and pounded by this offensive line. I think Quentin Williams showing success in that position says a lot about who he is as a person. I mean, this guy is a guy. This guy someone who's going to give you his all every single play. And I mean, he's obviously shown, I mean, 7 sacks and 6 sacks, like how you mentioned in previous seasons. Pretty impressive numbers as a defensive tackle. And yeah, you kind of touched on him not having that many moves to be able to use, which is absolutely true. I mean, as an interior D lineman, you're not able to really show your full toolbox when it comes to rushing the passer. And Quinton Williams being able to show success with such a limited resources, I think that's amazing. And I think, yeah, he kind of does headline this Jets defensive line. I mean, he is just a great guy when it comes to rushing the passer, and I think that's what you need in a defensive line, someone who's able to put pressure on the QB.
Yep, and he has a great compliment next to him in John Franklin Myers, another young guy, only 25 years old. He's been, kind of in between on the edge, on the interior. But I think, he's excelled in the interior. He's a bigger guy, 6'4", 288. So this guy will be on the inside most likely most of the time. And we already went over, who's on the edge. So the edge is kind of set, and I think this guy will have his time to shine on the interior. And I think, John Franklin Myers is a guy that really shows off his speed and his quickness with his moves and just overall athletically getting his body, moving faster than you think a 6'4", 288 guy would. So he's able to get through, these offensive lines a lot, and I think he's kind of had necessarily his breakout with the Jets. He started with the Los Angeles Rams, coming over to the Jets in 2020, and he he had 3 sacks in 2020, 6 sacks in 2021. Kind of maybe had his breakout. But I think this guy's super solid run defender and pass rusher as well. I think the interior of this defensive line is super strong. I think both of these guys, your 1-2 punch is, a lot. Both of these guys could start on a lot of teams as their number one. So having both of these guys on the same team, same spot on the field, both in the interior, offensive lines are going to have a lot of trouble blocking the two of these guys, pass game and run game. So can't speak enough about John Franklin Myers. But I'll hop into a couple of the rotational guys. So you have Sheldon Rankins, who's going to be, probably your first guy off the bench to rotate in with these interior guys. He's getting a little bit up there in age. He seems like he's been in the league for a long time, but 28 years old, so he's a little bit more of that veteran presence, knows a little bit more of what he's doing. Um, been with the Saints for the past bunch of years in his career, and just this past year coming over to the Jets. Didn't have a ton of action, but got 3 sacks in there, so this guy will be able to come in rotationally and get the job done when he needs to. And then you have a guy, Solomon Thomas, comes over, um, former San Francisco 49er first round pick, third overall in 2017. He played with the Raiders this past season and had, his probably best season overall, but he's got that connection with head coach Robert Saleh with the New York Jets coming over from the 49ers. So, I think Solomon Thomas will be able to work better from the interior. He was working a little bit more with the edge group in San Francisco, and I think the interior is more his style. So, he showed in college what he's capable of doing. We'll see if he can get back to that, but, his first 5 years of his career hasn't really gone that way. But another guy that 26 years old, still room for him to improve, and we'll see what these other guys can do. But I think definitely headlined by Quinn Williams, John Franklin Myers, your 1-2 punch on the interior. You have your 1-2 on the interior. You have your 1-2 on the edge. I think this will be a really solid defensive line overall. I think underrated group. I think not a lot of these guys get talked about too much, but I think these will be some solid guys to get after the passer week in and week out, and that'll be, in my opinion, maybe your strong suit of this defense.
Yeah, I mean, I'm gonna have to agree. I think this group of defensive linemen aren't obviously horrible. Obviously, they do have some bright pieces on the defensive line, but I think that there is some other stronger pieces in this other side of the defense.
Yeah, and we will hop into the next part of that right now, and I think we have to hop into linebackers, and the one guy we really, really, really need to talk about is C.J. Mosley. He's going to be your number one linebacker, your number one guy here. He's your highest paid player on the entire team, 5 year contract worth $85 million. So this guy is paid to be the leader of this defense. And his first season, or his first season with the Jets in 2019, wasn't able to play. 2020 didn't play as well. 2021 this past season, he finally got his first season with the Jets. Finally got to show off what what he's made of, and had a really really good season overall. This is your prototypical run defending middle linebacker. He's one of the better linebackers in the NFL. Great at everything he does, but he's going to really be excelling in that run defense aspect. Had 103 tackles this past season. Um, two forced fumbles, so he's able to punch the ball out when he needs to. This is your quarterback of the defense. I believe I said that, in one of the previous episodes, but this is your guy here in New York. He's going to lead these guys to, be the best they could be. So he's going to be your coach out there, telling everybody where to go, what their assignments are, what they need to do, and himself being that guy that can get after the running backs in the run game and also cover those tight ends and those receivers over the middle. So C.J. Mosley, super super solid, one of the better linebackers that is in the NFL today. So not enough that you can say about C.J. Mosley to really touch on how great he's going to be for this team.
Yeah, I mean, he is kind of that like bigger body, that guy that obviously is that kind of prototypical run defending linebacker, like how you kind of mentioned. And yeah, I mean, every team has their place with their guys. Obviously, some teams need a more like guy that can fly around the ball, but this guy's gonna just do what he does best. He's gonna make those secure tackles on those running backs up the middle. I think this guy's a perfect guy for the Jets. I mean, anybody coming through between the tackles obviously is gonna meet C.J. Mosley in the hole. And I think C.J. Mosley is definitely a good guy for the Jets to have running their defense because he obviously brings that experience, being 30 years old. He's not the oldest guy, he's not the youngest guy, but I mean he's got that experience in the NFL. Obviously, he did miss two seasons with injury ridden, but I mean this guy's no slouch. This guy will definitely get after it when he gets more playing time. I mean, 16 games last season, you seen what he could do, and I think there's only room to improve on with this guy.
Yeah, and I think you touched on the injury aspect of this, and that's something to think about. But I think this past season in 2021, it really showed that he's the same guy that the New York Jets brought in 2019. So he'll be here for years to come with that contract. He's still going to be here for a while, and I think there's no reason to think he's not playing at a high level. So I'll jump into the rest of the linebacking group, which I think after him there's a steep fall off, unfortunately. Your number two is kind of really up in the air. I mean, I don't really know who your number two linebacker is or your number three even. I mean, you have Quincy Williams, you have Quan Alexander. These guys are going to be in rotation. You have Delshon Phillips, you have Marcel Harris. All these guys haven't really seen too much action, up until this point in their careers in the NFL. I know, Quan Alexander and Marcel Harris both coming over again from the 49ers with Robert Sala, having that connection with him, so they'll definitely, be able to run this defense really well, super smart. And again, if CJ Mosley's not on the field, these guys can also be that coach that you need on the field on the defense, telling guys where they need to be, their assignments, all that stuff. Because, like I said, they've done it before with Robert Sala. So these guys will they'll all rotate in, but CJ Mosley's your one guy that you're seeing probably every single down possible. He's going to be on the field.
Yeah, I mean, I would agree on that. I mean, obviously these guys, this linebacking core is kind of like up there, not like completely up there in age, but they're all kind of older guys that I think they definitely all can kind of be that be that kind of coach in the middle linebacker position or in the linebacking core. So yeah, I mean, there's not much to really talk about with these other guys besides C.J. Mosley kind of like takes it all over. I mean, he kind of is that headlining guy, being the most paid athlete on his team. I think that he's going to really show why the Jets pay him that much money.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, it probably will be a rotation. I think probably you'll see Quincy Williams. He had the next biggest role on the team last year, so he'll probably be your number two to start. But I think these guys will probably rotate in and out, and we'll see a pretty good 1-2 punch, 1-2-3, depending on what down it is and how many linebackers Robert Saleh wants on the field. But I think he runs a lot of that two linebacker set. So with a nickel corner. So C.J. Mosley will be one of your guys, and there's going to be a rotation for that number two. But we'll hop into the corner group here. Start with the DBs. We'll start with corners, who are headlined by obviously the number four overall pick out of Cincinnati, who I already touched on a little bit in the intro. That being Sauce Gardner, Ahmad Gardner, whatever you want to call him. The guy's got sauce. He's unbelievable. Didn't allow a touchdown his whole college career. Guy's super, super long, super tall, 6'3", 200 pounds as a corner. You don't see that type of size usually at corner. A lot of these guys are, below 6 feet, so he'll be able to go and, contest catches with some of these bigger receivers in the NFL. We talked about a couple on his team, Corey Davis, Denzel Mims, guys that are really, really good in that contested catch game. Sauce Gardner is going to be really, really good in that contested catch game as a defensive player. So we'll see that this guy's going to be, taking on everybody's number one receiver. And he should be great in man, great in zone, and like I said, deep down the field, this is the guy you want. Super good speed and length. His arms are super, super long, unbelievable wingspan and height. Again, like I said, 6'3" as a corner is something you're definitely, not gonna take for granted. This is a guy that can match up against any receiver in the NFL. From Tyreek Hill to Devontae Adams to Mike Evans, very, very different play styles, but this guy's going to be able to lock down each and every one of them because of his pure athleticism and, size.
Yeah, I mean, I like how you kind of sum that up. Uh, yeah, obviously he's kind of like that old school, not really that old school. He's kind of like that kind of new athletic freak that we're kind of used to seeing now with these guys being so tall but still able to move. I mean, you're used to these guys kind of being like 6'5", like not, what I mean, like 6'5", big athletic freaks that are not able to move. But now with like people like DK coming into the league being 6'4", being able to actually be able to move, and I think with Sauce is no exception. I mean, 6'3", 200 pounds. I mean, that's a big guy, and then when he's able to move how he does and break up passes and kind of stay with the best of them, I think that's a really important asset that he brings to the table when it comes to being a defensive player. I think the Jets making this pickup was an excellent selection in this year's draft, and I think that he will help solidify this defense on the Jets team. And I mean, there's not really much to say about Sauce because we haven't really seen him play in the NFL much, but I mean, his college kind of says it all. I mean, he might not have been playing the best competition, but um, he obviously has shown that he's able to shut down anybody on any team. It doesn't really matter who he's up against. I mean, he goes against the number one team or number one receiver on the opposing team, and he's able to shut him down and not give up touchdowns. So I think Sauce is going to have obviously he's not going to not let up a touchdown in the NFL. I mean, come on, we're in the NFL now, but he's obviously going to play great, and I think that he'll be a great corner for the Jets, and obviously I think that he will perform to what everyone thinks he's going to be able to perform at.
Yeah, for sure. I think he was the best corner coming out. I mean, he got drafted after Derek Stingley, one pick after him, but I think Sauce Gardner is the more, unbelievable athlete of the two. I think, you look at this guy's pure size and, ran a 4.41 combine 40-yard dash. I think, you don't see that out of anybody. And the fact that he was able to also show the production in college, this guy has room to improve with his athleticism. We've talked a lot about athleticism and how it's important to, value that because people can grow into, if they have a strong arm as a quarterback, that's something you can't teach. And with Sauce Gardner, the speed and size that he has, you can't teach that stuff. So the the other aspects of his game, being that refined coverage guy, you can teach that, and I think he's shown that he can be that guy already. So this should be a solid number one corner coming out, and your lockdown guy for hopefully years to come for the New York Jets. But I'll hop into your number two guy being DJ Reed coming over from the Seattle Seahawks. Had a pretty solid season over there. Started his career with the 49ers, didn't really do much for them, was basically a special teamer, and then, got that chance with the Seattle Seahawks to be, on the field a lot more and, showed why he can be a number two corner opposite of a guy like Sauce Gardner. Now, DJ Reed, a very, very different, style guy, only 5'9" compared to 6'3", but another young guy, taken in the fifth round in 2018, that can show flashes of him being, a number one corner at times, but I think super solid as your number two to have DJ Reed over there, opposite of Sauce Gardner to have that, shorter guy to maybe be a little bit quicker with his hands, quicker with his feet, and cover those guys in the short game. And Sauce Gardner be able to take on that guy going vertical every play, um, and cover those, jump balls, contested catches. So a little one-two punch there, kind of like what you saw out of this receiving core, having that bigger body guy with Corey Davis and that smaller guy to work the short game with Elijah Moore. You have that similar one-two duo here with the corners in Sauce Gardner and DJ Reed.
Yeah, I mean, I think DJ Reed is a great addition to this team. Kind of sad to see him leave the Seahawks. I'd be being a Seahawks fan, but I think he was well deserved in the money that he got to go to the Jets. But yeah, I mean, you kind of touched on it. I think it'll be a great compliment to a guy like Sauce Gardner being 6 foot and DJ being only 6'2" and DJ being only 5'9". I think that's going to be a great compliment to each other. Obviously DJ probably brings some more little experience to the team with him being 25, and I mean Sauce just kind of being a rookie into the NFL. So I wonder. I'm curious to see how DJ Reed's kind of gonna help Sauce kind of learn his way into the NFL, and kind of curious how this chemistry with these two are gonna kind of mix and match. So DJ Reed, I mean, obviously we kind of know him as you kind of touch on it, not really the greatest guy coming off. He wasn't the greatest in 49ers, but I mean, he did show obviously when he got a chance to play in the Seahawks, he obviously showed that he was a decent corner, and I think he not only has gained confidence from being in Seattle, I think that he's definitely gotten better. And so I think that the Jets kind of picked him up in a right time. I think that he's kind of at his confidence peak. I think he'll be a great corner to play in the NFL now. I think that when we're talking about starting corners, I mean DJ Reed's in that. DJ Reed is definitely in that conversation. I mean he gets after it and he gets after the ball. I think that's very important in a corner. And yeah, I think DJ Reed is a great addition to this Jets defense.
Yeah, I think he'll be super solid. I think your one-two corner duo will be good. They're both young guys, obviously, but I think they'll be solid overall. I mean, you gave DJ Reed a three-year deal or $33 million, so you're expecting this guy to come in and produce immediately, be a shutdown corner. So I think DJ Reed will have a definite role in this defense. He'll be your number two guy, and we'll see how he's able to work with Robert Saleh. I mean, obviously he was there in San Francisco and didn't really get much of a chance there, but maybe Robert Saleh saw something while he was there and brought him in here to have a bigger role. So I'll touch on a couple of the other rotational corners here. We have Michael Carter the second will be kind of your slot guy most likely. Um, I'm talking about DJ Reed being that guy with quickness and speed in his hands, speed in his hips, his feet, all that stuff. I think Michael Carter's going to be your slot guy covering those slot receivers. And then Bryce Hall being another superb athlete similar to a Sauce Gardner athletically. I mean, obviously he hasn't produced nearly as much as a corner, but 6'1", only 24 years old, former fifth round pick out of Virginia in 2020. I think that this guy has the speed to, be an unbelievable vertical corner, but I think he just hasn't really put it together. So Bryce Hall, if he can get there, has the athletic ability to be an unbelievable corner, but it's just we've yet to see that out of him so far. So, it's mainly your one-two guys and Sauce Gardner, DJ Reed. Michael Carter will be super solid in the slot as well as a super young guy, only 23 years old. But I think the name of this entire team is basically youth out of every position on the ball, basically. So, corners aren't any different. A lot of young guys coming in, a lot of room to grow, and yeah, I think it'll be a pretty solid unit overall, though.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, being young is a great factor when it comes to playing in the NFL. I think that the Jets are kind of in this. They did have obviously a rough well, not obvious. They obviously had a rough past years. But I think with this new generation coming in, this newer younger team, I think that we definitely could see a turnaround, and I think the corners are going to do a big part in that. I think they're going to help out a lot.
Yeah, and they'll also get some help from these safeties behind them. We'll hop into them now. So, for me, it looks like there's about three guys that you're looking at to be in rotation and get starting time. So, I'll start with the veteran, and I'll go down in age, I guess. We'll start with Lamarcus Joyner. 31 years old, definitely getting up there, but he's he's been doing it for a while. He's played a little slot corner in his career. He's bounced around a lot. He started with the Rams, then went to the Raiders, and now he's hopped on with the Jets. But he's a smart guy, veteran guy, but nothing crazy athletically. Only 5'8", not really the fastest guy, not really gonna fly around, but super smart, can play the run pretty well, and we'll see how he can mesh with the Jets. We haven't really seen it from him, in 2021. Didn't really get to play at all, so we'll see what he can do here. I think, before I move on, I'd like to touch on the fact that these New York Jets lost, maybe their best player last year, who was Marcus May, who signed with the New Orleans Saints on a 3-year deal worth $22.5 million dollars. So you lose one of your better players and by far your best safety in Marcus May. These guys are going to try to have to fill that role. So I'll hop into the next guy, that being Jordan Whitehead here. A younger guy, 25 years old, bounced around a little bit as well. He started with Tampa Bay, first 4 years of his career, and now the Jets bring him in to, start a lot more, get a lot more playing time, and we'll see what he can do with all of that. Not pressure, but the expectations of him to be that starting safety. And then a guy who I think is really underrated and who I think, you'll see more than I think a lot of people think, and that is Ashton Davis, former third round pick out of California in 2020. Only 25 years old again, another young guy, but this guy is your athlete at safety. Unbelievable speed and size at 6'1", 202 pounds. Your other two safeties are both 5'10" or shorter, so this is your taller guy that can maybe match up against the tight end and also run with any of these guys. But he's also gonna light a dude up in the hole if he gets a chance to make a play. He's gonna make the running back, the receiver. He's gonna make him pay. Any guys catching the ball over the middle of the field, you got to watch out for Ashton Davis. He's gonna take your head off. So. This guy's underrated. I think he gets disrespected, and I think he deserves a starting spot on this team. I don't know who he's going to start over, or if he even does, but I think he deserves a shot. He's an unbelievable athlete, and this guy just needs to refine up those coverage skills. But I think overall, this guy could be a valuable asset to this defense, regardless.
Yeah, I mean, you kind of mentioned him just being an athlete. Yeah, I mean, I would agree. They're both Jordan Whitehead and Ashton Davis are both kind of younger guys, so I would like to see Ashton Davis obviously get some more playing time over Joyner, but I think those two, Jordan Whitehead and Ashton Davis, are definitely gonna see the field a little bit or more than likely, and so I think that these two will definitely be a great duo together, and I think they're both like 25 years old, so I mean they're both young still. They both have definitely room to improve. And so it's going to be very interesting to see how this upcoming season with these two, and I mean Lamarcus Joyner, I mean we can't dismiss him, but we can see how these two will definitely complement each other and really put it together on the field.
Yeah, definitely. I think if you're good, we can just wrap up the whole defense here. I think overall, again, like the offense, this defense is very young. I mean, most positions that you're looking at, you got a guy in his first year, second year, under like 25 years old for most of these guys on this defense. So I think, that guy CJ Mosley that we raved about when we went over the linebackers, he's going to be super, super essential to this defense. I think he's going to be, you're just about one veteran that you have starting. Most of these guys are super, super young, like I said. So CJ Mosley's going to be, super important to these guys to make sure everything's going just how he wants, just how Robert Saleh wants, and it'll be interesting to see how Robert Saleh can put these young guys together. I mean, obviously, young guys are going to be incredible athletes most of the time, so he's going to have a speedy team, a speedy defense to get around and cover these guys, but he's just got to sharpen up the mental aspect, which is all teachable stuff. So we'll see how it goes, but I think overall this defense has the chance to be a very, very solid unit. It's just we've yet to see it so far, obviously.
Yeah, I mean I like how you kind of put that. Definitely a young team. I think they definitely also all have room to improve, and I think this is just an upcoming team, and I think that's just kind of how to put it with them.
Yeah, I think overall this team may not be competing for a Super Bowl, but in the coming years, if these guys can grow into some of the athleticism that they have and some of the guys that we know that they are capable of being, these guys could really make a team here and make a name for themselves if growth can happen. And I don't see why not. I mean, they're all going to be growing together. These guys are going to work together, and they're all young, so it should be interesting to see. Maybe not, 2022 might not be the best season, but I think overall these guys have a lot of room to grow, like you said, and there's no reason to think that in the future this can't be a team, a force to be reckoned with. So,
Yeah.
we'll hop into special teams here to wrap it up. At kicker, you have Greg Zerline, who you bring in. He's been a little, iffy the past couple years. He was super solid with the Rams his whole career with them. Jumped over to the Dallas Cowboys and showed his age kind of playing paying a little bit of a toll on him. He's not Greg the Leg or Legatron, whatever you want to call him anymore necessarily, but he's a solid kicker. He's a veteran guy, 34 years old. He's been doing it for a while. He's going to be pretty accurate. Maybe not having the pure like power to kick those 55 yarders, but this guy's going to get the job done for you. And again, we talked about how many young guys there are on this team. You look at punter, 24 years old, of course. Everybody's young. So Braden Mann here, as your punter, he's been doing it for 2 years now. He's not gonna lose you any games. Maybe not the strongest leg, averaging like 44 yards a punt, which you're not gonna be too wowed by, but he's an accurate guy, young guy again. So special teams aren't gonna kill you here, and I think kicker's your main thing you're looking at. And 2021, Greg Zerline wasn't necessarily great with the whole accuracy thing with the length, but he can get it back, and he's been dealing with some injuries, so we'll see. We'll see what he does.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, you kind of summed it up pretty nice. I mean, I just want to touch on the punt returner and kick returner Braxton Barrows. I mean, he's not your that explosive guy. I mean, obviously he's just a guy back there. He's not gonna wow you. He's just there to basically just catch the ball. Honestly, that's kind of the best way to put it. He's gonna do the fundamentals right. He's gonna know what he's doing. Just there to basically just catch the ball, make sure that the ball is just in the right spot. That's basically all he's there for.
I tend to disagree. I think Braxton Berrios is a very good returner. I mean, 2021 he took one back for 102 yards. I think he had 852 yards on kickoffs this past year. So this guy, he can make plays back there. He's got the speed to do it. I mean, yeah, he's going to be super solid and making sure everything goes swimmingly. He's not going to mess up too much, but this guy's definitely capable of, taking them to the house and being that electric kick returner or punt returner for your team. So I don't know. I mean, Braxton Berrios got some playing time as a receiver this past season, and he's shown that he's a valuable asset to this team. So he'll be decent back there, returning kicks and stuff. So overall, special teams, nothing crazy, nothing, super, super special. You're not going to be raving about these guys. You don't have, Justin Tucker. You don't have Devin Hester. We're not talking about guys like that. So nothing crazy, but, they round out this team as just, pretty decent overall. I mean, if you want to, we can talk about what we think, 2022 looks like for these New York Jets. I think, overall, in my opinion, this will be probably the fourth ranked team in the AFC East. I don't think that they're, um, ready to take over the rest of the teams in this division. I don't think they make the playoffs, but like I said, I think this team has a lot of room to improve. A lot of young guys here, so maybe 2022 isn't the best season for them, but I think these guys definitely have room to grow.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely would agree on that. I mean, I definitely see them being at the bottom of their division because obviously this division is kind of when we really look into them and really look into their teams. This division is pretty stacked. It's pretty decent, and so I think the Jets just they do have the young pieces that they need. I just don't think that they have really all the skills that they so desperately need. And obviously, a quarterback. I don't think their quarterback is going to be winning them as many games as some of these other quarterbacks in this division.
Yeah, I also think, I want to mention I don't really think that this team is going to be, competing for the number, 4 overall pick necessarily. I think this team's definitely going to be a step up from 2021. Um, but, like you said, this division's tough. There's a lot of good teams in here, and the AFC overall is very tough. That's kind of why I'm saying, no playoffs for them, most likely. And number four in the division, just because this is a tough division, tough conference. So, I definitely want to mention I do think this team is a step up from 2021, but just not that huge leap that you're looking for. With teams like the Bengals and the 49ers in the past couple of years, like going from zero to hero, going from a top five pick to the Super Bowl. But this team will be definitely a step up from the past couple of years.
Yeah, I mean, I obviously would tend to agree on that situation that you just stated, for sure.
All right, well, I think we'll wrap it up here. We got a whole good episode in here on the New York Jets. Um, it was a lot of fun. This team again, super polarizing, super fun to watch. I think this team will be one of the teams to watch because again, like we said, there's a lot of young guys, a lot of new guys too who are in this new situation. So it'll be interesting to see how these guys pan out. So, overall, good luck to the Jets in the 2022 season. But to wrap it up, for my co-host Jack Priller, I'm Mike Maynard. Thank you for listening to the Underground Football Podcast, and yeah, we'll see you next time.